Hello and welcome to Business Insider with Mario Toneguzzi on YYC Business. Joining me today is Gillian Mandich, who is a nationally known happiness expert. Thanks for joining us today, Gillian.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, let's just start with an overall question, Gillian. And as you see things unfolding today with all the troubles that we've been through in the past year or so with the pandemic, how would you describe where the state of happiness is of Canadians right now?
This is such an interesting question because the pandemic has been very different for a lot of people, and even for people across the country. Like we were chatting before, and I'm in Toronto and you're in Calgary, and so things are even different, even though we're both Canadian. Provincially, locally, things are different. And yet I will say one thing that it has been universal across the country is, I think, one of the silver linings from this pandemic is that it has placed mental health at the forefront of the conversation more so than we've ever seen before. We've seen a lot more conversations normalized beyond just like, hey, how are you? I'm good, right? We're talking about our feelings. We're witnessing whether it's with ourselves, with our family, with our friends, with our colleagues, what mental health can look like and what it can be like to go through some of those challenging times. And so in terms of the state of happiness, I think it's much more a topic of conversation than I have ever seen. We're looking, a lot of us have not been as happy as we think we possibly can. So we're looking for ways to boost our happiness, ways to ride the roller coaster of the spectrum of human emotions. And I think we're finally getting to that place where things are starting to open up and we're starting to have, a sense of returning to some of the things that did make us happy that we haven't been able to experience in the past year and however long it's been. It kind of all blurs together at this point, right?
Well, how do you find, life, I'm trying to remember, but there was an author named Scott Peck, and what was his book, The Road Less Traveled or something like that. And I think the very first line of that book was "Life is hard," right? And it certainly is, right? Where the numerous challenges all the time, especially now with with the pandemic, but economic recessions, etc. How do people find happiness in tough times?
This is something that I was actually surprised to learn. So when I first started my PhD and decided that happiness was the area of research that I wanted to focus on, part of the reason I chose that topic was from a personal perspective, because when I did I took a step back and looked at my life and tried to be really honest with myself and how I'm feeling. And I thought, I don't think I'm feeling as happy as I possibly could be. So part of the reason I wanted to study happiness from a personal perspective was to figure out, how can I be happier? I don't want to feel the challenging emotions, right? I don't want to feel anxiety. I don't want to feel stress. I don't want to feel down or depressed. I want to get rid of all of those feelings and I want to be happy. And I really thought that was the goal. And that was what got me into happiness research in the first place, was trying to answer that question. And what I quickly learned, however, was that the goal in life is not to be happy all the time. And in terms of healthy psychological functioning, happiness all of the time is not what we're aiming at. Yes, it's possible, no matter how happy or unhappy we're feeling right now, to do things to increase our happiness. And at the same time, happiness all the time is really not what we want, right? We oftentimes, if you think about in our life, some of the challenging things that we go through, the difficult things, living through this pandemic, it's really tested our resiliency. It's tested so much of our capacity. And yet through those difficult times, we may do things like build character. It may build self-awareness. It may show us areas where things weren't working, that we need to do something differently, stop doing things, switch things. And so I think that instead of setting the goal of being happy all of the time, taking a step back, feeling our emotions, knowing that, yes, it is possible to be happier than we are, and yet to set that realistic expectation, to know that, I'm a happiness researcher and I'm not happy all the time. And I don't want to be happy all the time. I don't want my family to be, or my friends or my loved one or you, because, really, we do need that spectrum of human emotions in order to for healthy psychological functioning.
Okay, sometimes I'm referred to as a grumpy old man, and I have that, the hoodie from Disney, Grumpy, as well. Give me some tips on how I can be more happy.
For sure. So, and I think sometimes people are often asked, like, are we just born happy or not? Right. Like, some
Yeah.
people, we know them and then their parents seem happy and we think, oh, they must have just been born like that because that's, a genetic element. And so when we look at our capacity for happiness, there absolutely is a genetic element. So you can thank your parents or not, but that does have an influence on our happiness. There's another piece of that important piece of the equation that is our environment. And I think we can all appreciate this past year and whatever it is how our environment can affect our happiness. And then there's this third piece, and that's the piece that my research and my work focuses on. And that's the piece that's up to us, that's within our control. So it's our thoughts, our actions, and our behaviors. And research teaches us that we can focus on that, on our thoughts, our actions, and our behaviors to increase our happiness in a very meaningful and significant way. So a couple of quick things that we can do that are evidence-based, and different things work for different people, and different things work for different people at different times too. So there's not like this formula, right? Like people will often ask me like, okay, Gillian, what's the magic pill, right? What's the one thing I need to do or buy or get or say? But that's not how it works. At the same time, what we can do is we can look at the research to sort of help point us in the right direction to some things that have been shown to be effective for a lot of people. So we can try them. And if they don't work for us, then we try other things, because we're all, happiness is universal, and yet happiness is unique at the same time, because what makes you happy and what makes me happy, we may have similarities and different, right? So a couple sort of top level things are gratitude, right? And what I love about gratitude is, and what I mean by that is taking time, ideally every day, to think about, or in a best case scenario, write down things that we're thankful for, things that we appreciate in our life. And whether that be people or things that we learned or coworkers or colleagues or events that happened, it doesn't so matter as much what we're focusing on in terms of being grateful. It's that we're looking for things to appreciate in our life. And that is really highly correlated with happiness. So that's something I love it, because it, like I said, doesn't cost anything. It can be done anywhere, and it doesn't take a lot of time. But it does require continual practice. So it's not like this overnight, you're grateful, and then the next day you wake up and you're happy, right? It doesn't work like that. But what happens over time is it starts to build, and we start to see increases in happiness when people practice gratitude on a regular basis. Another one, I think, that given that it's the weather starting to be nicer and stuff, it's really getting outside and getting into nature. And nature has benefits beyond just our happiness too, right? We see things like creativity, problem-solving ability, reducing stress, even, unplugging in and of itself. If we can leave our devices at home when we go outside for a walk, go for a hike, whatever it is, that's something that can really shift our mood, and do it instantly, right? It isn't like something like gratitude that we build over time. We can go out, we can move our bodies, we can go for a walk, and we can start to see mood changes as we do it right away.
Okay. What's the connection? And from all the research you've done, what's the connection between happiness and health? Like physical health, not mental.
Yes. So my PhD is actually in health science, and I started studying happiness because what I learned was that happiness and health are highly correlated. So when we compare happy people to unhappy people, what we see is that happy people have lower rates of cardiovascular disease. They have stronger immune systems. They heal faster from injury, and even beyond just health, right? Because our physical body, we do see often improvements in people that are happier, but it extends even beyond that to the workplace. We see that happier people tend to be more cooperative, better problem solvers. They tend to be better rated as more well-liked between both their colleagues and customers, clients, things like that. So there's so many benefits to happiness beyond just that feel good in the moment. And I think that that's a really key piece of knowing that, because I think sometimes, especially when we're creating a list of the things that we want to do in a day, sometimes happiness or things that make us happy might drop off because we may not prioritize it. And yet, I would make a case that focusing on our happiness is one of the most important things that we can do, not only in terms of how we're feeling mentally, but also in terms of how we're feeling physically as well.
Okay. And one last area to chat about is work. And the importance of happiness and work. And now I know everything's kind of thrown out of whack this past year or so, because people are working from home. Let me just ask that thing. You think people are happier when they're working from home, or in an office environment?
I think just like we talked about before, it's very unique. Some people love the routine of getting up, going into the office, and that boundary at the end of the day, they log off or they leave their office or their place of work and they go home. And so they're able to maintain that separation and they like that.
Yeah.
Some people like being able to work at home in their yoga pants or their sweatpants and put a shirt on and do Zoom calls. And what we're seeing a lot, I actually was just looking at data the other day that, a lot of people want to look towards a hybrid model where they have a bit of choice, where they can go into the office sometimes, but also work at home sometimes. It saves, I live downtown Toronto, so commuting, for example, can be something that takes up a lot of time, a lot of frustration, a lot of energy. So maybe reducing commuting on a couple of days, think how much time that would save if you add it up throughout the month. Yeah. And so I think that more than it being, working at your workplace or at home, when we look at happiness, the piece that I focus on is what we call in research is autonomy. So that's recognizing that our choices are up to us. And I think that the key with our workplace is really figuring out how can we create the best possible environment that's most conducive to our success, our workplace happiness, whatever that is. And so being able to be a participant in choosing that in terms of having the most impact on our happiness, that's kind of the key question.
So are happier people at work more productive people?
They certainly are. See, you could do my happiness research with me. Yeah, absolutely. More productive, but also more cooperative, more collaborative, more altruistic, so more likely to volunteer both time and money. Happy people actually, when we look at all of these different things, the relationship element being rated as more well-liked by peers and colleagues. So they call it like a happiness halo sometimes in the research where, I mean, think about it. Wouldn't you rather spend time with somebody that's happy and in a good mood and is encouraging and kind, as opposed to, an Oscar the Grouch or a Eeyore type character, right? Yeah. When we think about how that, because what we do and how we act affects other people, whether that be on virtually or in person. And so when we think about who are the people that we want to be around and spend time with, oftentimes those things and how people are acting do impact us. And research from Harvard actually found that our happiness spreads 3 degrees from us. So when you meet somebody, it affects them, but then also the people that they meet. And so you see this ripple effect where really focusing on our happiness and doing things that bring us joy goes beyond us. It goes to the people that we meet and then the people that they meet. Okay.
I should hang around with a lot of those Buddhist monks, right? Because they always have that smile.
Zen and peaceful.
Zen and peacefulness around them. So I'm just curious, and I don't know if there's research out on this rating happiness in countries. Is there stuff like that? And if so, where would Canada rate in this kind of ranking?
So every year, the World Health Organization puts out what they call World Happiness Report, and they rank all, the countries in the world in terms of, most of the countries in the world in terms of their happiness. And the indicators that they use are very far reaching. So they look at things like gross domestic product, economy, that sort of piece. But then they also look at social things like healthcare, education, parental leave. They look at things like, they actually ask a question about, if you lost your wallet and there was money in it, how confident are that you would get your wallet back with money? So looking at things like how safety and that. So it's a very comprehensive ranking system and rating system that they use. And usually the top, I mean, they sort of fight for like 1 to 5 is all the Scandinavian countries. So you see Iceland, Finland, Sweden, Denmark, Norway tend to always be at the top. Canada this year, so every year the report comes out on March 20th because that's the International Day of Happiness. So this year, Canada actually dropped in the rankings. We're number, I believe it's 12 now, might be 11 or 12. And for the first time in a while, the States actually bumped up just above us this year. And so that's kind of interesting. And we do rank high. And I think that a lot of that is a testament to the social supports and the social structures that we have available to us in Canada.
So I'm curious, who was number 1?
I want to say it was Sweden, but it could have been Finland. It's one of those. It's all the Scandinavian countries. Like the reports, I think this is the 9th year actually that the report came out. So it comes out every year. And this year in particular, they did a big focus on COVID and how it's affected the countries, how people have responded, how countries have responded, how governments have responded. And they actually make the report available for free online. So if you know, you just Google World Happiness Report, World Health Organization, it'll come up and you can read sort of the executive summary where they see the rankings. And if you're someone like me that loves to dive more into the details of it, you can download the entire full report and read it if that's of interest.
Oh, that's cool. That's great.
Yeah.
Great to know. All right. Well, super. Thanks very much, Gillian, for taking the time to do this.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much. It makes me happy to talk about happiness. So thank you for having me.
Okay, great. That was Gillian Mandich, who is a nationally known health expert, but more importantly, happiness expert. This has been Business Insider with Mario Toneguzzi on YYC Business. Thanks for joining us today.